Wishy Washington is known by his friends as a chill guy who doesn't get in anyone's way about anything. He seems to be the kind of guy that agrees with everything anyone has to say. He's quote unquote likable because he doesn't step on anyone's toes. It turns out that agreeing with everything that people say keeps you in good books with them. Unfortunately, Wishy Washington is also a complete pushover. What seems to be a very nice and agreeable person is actually someone who simply isn't anchored in anything. When he's around his Christian friends, he's a Christian. When he's around his gangster type bad boy friends, so is he. He doesn't seem to stand for anything at all. He's a friend of many for his agreeableness, but you know how that goes. He's actually two-faced. The only time he gets in any trouble with anyone over his values is when people who don't like each other find out he's actually friends with them all. He's a people pleaser who makes everyone around him happy, and in the end, he's just drained. Deep down, he wishes he had more strength to express himself, but he's too afraid to be pushed out of the in-group. His need to belong is interfering with what he believes in. In fact, his need to belong is getting in the way of knowing what he believes in the first place. Welcome back to another episode of the Govcast. I was actually talking to one of my friends at church who's checked out the podcast and asked if I do any kind of series for my podcast, like dedicate a segment on setting goals or a segment on fitness, etc. And it actually made me realize that the last episodes have been a mini-series of the pillars of being a respectable man, which I think is a good way to start my return, to podcasting. So today we're going to continue our journey, and this one's going to be talking about the importance of a value system. Every man must have a set of values and principles that are unshakable. Those are his foundation. The level of respect you can get in life is largely based on your values and how firmly you stand in them. Even if people end up not liking you, they'll know that you're a man of your word and you stand for something. In the cases when we decide what our values are, we gain some very good friends, but we can also lose a lot of people that we thought were our friends. You have to be willing to lose friends over what you stand for, and don't look back. Good things are always on the way for people who stand firm in their belief, and I believe that God always seems to favor these kind of people. It just makes you an overall attractive person because it takes a lot of courage and confidence to be authentic and real about your values and principles. A wishy-washy man can betray you, and he essentially betrays himself because he is easily wavered by people with stronger wills than him. It's more likely for a guy who is passive in his own belief system to be fake and untrustworthy. If you've paid attention to a guy who just flows through his existence, you instinctively know not to want anything to do with him because you know it could be your downfall, right then and there. Having no core values is like a form of chaos, and life is already chaotic as it is, so you have to take responsibility to control what you can. Having core values creates structure and stability in your life. I like this quote from Friedrich Nietzsche, where he said, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded. This is the nature of living creatures." And just like Wishy Washington in that story, if you have no values, you're doomed to have a chaotic life, or to be tossed around by people who know what they stand for instead. When you think of what kind of values to set, the best thing you could do is divide them according to the different parts of your life. I found that values around your faith, family, business, your fitness, and your social groups tend to cover all the bases. We want to protect our mind, our spirit, and our body, and I found that these key areas tend to set up a great value system and belief system for us to have a great life. I'm just going to reference the Bible here. And if we looked at Matthew 6 verse 33, it says, "Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." Putting aside that it's a religious text, if we break it down, it simply means get your priorities straight and then everything else will just fall in line. These principles start with our value system. And after you know what you stand for, find a group of people who follow the same or similar values and principles to protect your own. Your values actually help attract the right crowd. And one of my homies on IG Threads reminded me of a great quote when he said, it was a very short one too, it's just, "Your vibe attracts your tribe." And there's nothing more truthful than that. When there's all these things that are happening, all these distractions around, there's nothing else that can help you stay within your values and your principles more than having a group of people who all believe in the same thing. It might sound like an echo chamber, but it's honestly something that you'd rather have than to have people, than to be on your own and isolated, because you'll be vulnerable and anyone can influence you at that point. So a tool that I keep on referring to is a journal. We need to be clear about what we believe in and remind ourselves what that is. Write, read, and remind. That's how I do things around here. Because like if I have if it's about financial values, then it has to be clear in your mind what you can and cannot do with your money. Fitness values, if you're going for a certain body type, you need to be clear about what you can and cannot eat. There's just no way around it. If you want to live a certain type of life, you have to live by certain type of rules that you give yourself. And if you don't give yourself those rules, you're going to be following someone else's. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't like following people's rules. So as simple as this little episode is, it has to be made, because this show is still in its foundation stages. And before I can start getting creative, we should just be on the same page. Every man needs to have fundamental principles that he lives by daily, because that's how you form your own unique identity. Remember, your self-image is in your hands. For as long as you're aware of what you can control your beliefs and you can control your behavior. Don't waste a second doing anything until you get clarity on what you stand for, so you can weather any storm, because life has its challenges, its ebbs and flows, and you need to have your value system that guides you on how you're going to take action for every single one of them. So yeah, that's it for today, guys. Thanks for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe and follow on Spotify and YouTube. I release an episode every week, and I know for a fact you don't want to miss it. Stay blessed. Peace.